So
Right.
thank you for that. So I suppose for the remaining part of our conversation, and I'm loving this. This. I'm just in heaven, mate. I love this type of conversation. I think it's really productive.
Me too. Me too.
I want to take our conversation to specifically look at policing. You know, my past organization, and I want to talk about it from a place of support. I really support my organization. I'm loyal to policing. But over these last couple of years in the US, we had the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, a serving police officer who murdered, he's in jail, murdered George Floyd, in spite of 3 other police officers, being there and not doing anything. And these officers now have been found guilty for not intervening, and they will go to jail for 10, 15 years. Here in the
Not
UK,
only that, the perpetrator had a history of doing terrible things that was repeatedly that was never addressed.
And that's a good point, because here in the UK, we had a serving police officer from London, the Metropolitan Police Officer, who was convicted of murdering a lady, Sarah Everard. And yes, when you looked at the background, his nickname, he was called the Rapist. That was his nickname. And so that suggests there was behaviors and attitudes that were in the past. So for me, the question is, how would active bystander training support policing, do you think? And how could we use like social norms approaches within a policing context?
Right. So first of all, I'm like you. I want to support and appreciate and validate our law enforcement.
Yeah.
We could have certain debates like, should we spend less money on law enforcement and more on social services? Because if we spent more money on social services, maybe you wouldn't have to go into so many nasty emergencies. But we still need law enforcement, and most people in law enforcement are good people who are trying to do the right thing. But we have a culture that allows these people, the 2 examples you gave, right, the cop in London and in Minnesota, that allows certain individuals to do horrible things over and over and over again and not be held accountable. So we need to change that culture.
Yeah.
If you're a farmer and your crops aren't growing, maybe you don't have the right nutrition in the soil, right? You need to have the environment support the behaviors that you want. So I'm sure if we went back to either of those police departments and interviewed the people who were on the force for a long time, they would say, I was always uncomfortable with Alan's behavior. When Alan talked this way, I didn't like it. When I saw this, I didn't like it. Well, why didn't you do anything? Because there's a barrier. I want to do something, but I don't. So what's the block? We need to remove the block. One of the blocks is, I'll be seen as disloyal. So what you're telling me now is we're not saying you're being disloyal, you're actually being more loyal. Because if you had intervened with him 15 years ago, he wouldn't be in jail now.
Yeah.
Or maybe he wouldn't be on the police force because he wouldn't change his behavior, and he thinks he got ripped off and he got a raw deal, but he doesn't realize that it's better to lose your job than to go to jail for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then we need to say, well, I didn't know what to do because he's a sergeant and I'm just new on the force. So then so it's a whole complex of different interventions that all together, and it's also leadership, because we know that the biggest predictor of sexual harassment in the workplace is leadership. And if leadership is seen as not caring, then sexual harassment is more likely to flourish. Well, how many times in a workplace environment or a law enforcement environment is someone's behavior brought to the attention of the leaders and then they're perceived as not doing anything? Yeah. They might have done something, but we don't know about it. So we need to find a way to tell people, look, even though I can't tell you what we did to Alan, I could tell you that last year, 6 officers were reprimanded for these behaviors and the consequences range from this and this. So we need to have a sense that if I say something, someone else will do something. So it's really a very systematic thing. It's not, that's why, you see people who are trying to sell you the magic pill to solve a problem. And it's like, There is no magic pill, but there's a lot of things altogether that we could do over time that will make a difference.
Yeah.